Guys, crypto is absolutely pumping. What a morning to wake up to. Rolled over to look at my phone at 5 a.m. Could not get back to sleep. I'm so excited. Finally, we've started to see a bit of a breakout of what we've been talking about for the last few months. It's been a really tough period. I want to share with you my updated strategy, what I've been talking about on the channel for a little while, and also where and how we're going to start to exit as we come into the back end of this bull market. How quickly sentiment has shifted. We've seen a bunch of altcoins up 20, 30%. Even over the last month, we've seen a lot of altcoins double in price, and Bitcoin up around that $102,000 mark as time of recording, 160,000 Aussie dollars. Let's go. So excited. So in this video, I'm going to share with you what's going on with the market, how to get prepared, what altcoin, specifically one altcoin I'm really excited on, but I'm going to share with you a little bit about the other sectors I'm looking at. I did a video last week on how I would invest $50,000 in the market. I'll share with you my updated sort of strategy on that, as well as where and how I'm going to start to exit at the back in this bull market. As I mentioned, that is the most important part. You can have all the altcoins in the world, you can have the best portfolio, but if you never sell, you're going to round trip, you're going to be back in the gutters, and you're going to be kicking yourself and worried and stressed about what's to come into the next 2-3 year bear market, which will eventually happen, right? So I really don't want you to go through that. So I'm going to give you all of my updates and insights on this video. As always, please leave me a subscribe if you enjoy these videos. We are a completely independent research company here in Australia, biggest in the country. We work with the likes of CoinSpot, SwiftX, Coinbase now. I've been full-time investing for 8 years, made life-changing amounts of money, and now I love helping you guys because if I do that, I can get paid through our subscription fees of our research platform and I can buy more crypto, right? That's the only way we work. We don't do affiliate fees. Don't do any of that nonsense. Let's crack into it. So really, the big thing here is we've started to see the breakout back from basically middle of April, right? Only a month ago, we were essentially at the bottom of this little sort of correction, right? And if we look at the correction from the peak to the bottom, we had in Bitcoin around 35% retracement, right? Which is actually quite small in contrast to previous bull markets. In previous bull markets, we've actually had, down to 50, 60%. Now, altcoins had a lot deeper correction, but this bounced off the lows from April, 73,000 to 100,000 today. In just under a month, we're up 42% on Bitcoin, right? Really strong move. I'll share a little bit about why that's happening in a second, but the other part from the altcoin perspective, we started to see perhaps a small breakout here on the ETH BTC chart. It's been in a downtrend for 4 years. Every ETH investor under the sun, every altcoin investor on ETH has been waiting for this to break out. Am I confident this will follow through? Look, I don't think we've seen enough yet. Considering we've been in a 4-year downtrend, we really need to start to see that movement above the bull market support band. This has been a really good indication, the bull market support band, of like when the market's going to continue to grow higher. Every time, if you look right back, even to 2021, where the market has been above and broken out above that support trend line, we've seen the market really push higher, right? We grew high here in 2021. We're above that support band. We ran up for essentially, what was it, nearly a year. As soon as we break below, the same thing happens. And what we started to see recently is a little bit of a break above that again over the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks. So really positive signs there. Fundamentally, we're strong as well, which I'll share in a second. But one altcoin that I'm really excited about is Sui. So Sui, I've spoken about on the channel before. I did a video the other day, I think it was Monday, on how I'd invest $50,000 in crypto. Sui has been one that I've continually wanted to add and grow in my portfolio. Broke out of its multi-month downtrend back in April, and we've had a huge run since then. I actually was able to pick up a lot at that $2 point. I'll show you that post in a second. We're basically doubled, right? Up 100% in 2 and a bit weeks, right? Really big breakout. Now, ultimately, what we've seen in the past, and this is one that it's been interesting, I want you guys to look at, is that if we look back on Solana against Bitcoin back in 2021, we had this huge run up, right? Solana really outperformed Bitcoin for a long period of time, right? Back in that sort of 2021 altcoin season, we obviously saw Solana really on a great run. Since then, it's been, and again, back, a couple of years ago, we had that run up, but since then, it's kind of been chopping sideways and been in this range pretty much for the last year or so. But more recently, we've started to see Solana drop off a little bit against Bitcoin, right? If you look at the peak to the bottom, about 56, 60%, right? Solana had a big drop off point. But ultimately, Solana led the previous cycle. What we're seeing this year, and I think this is potentially a bit of a shift in terms of that next-gen layer 1 space, is we're started to see Sui really break out against BTC. So back to this point here, Solana starting to break down against BTC. Sui is really outperforming to the point where Sui is up over the last couple of months, up 60% against BTC versus down 40% on Solana. So I think we're starting to see some really strong momentum for SUI this cycle. And I think SUI is going to be the leader of this market, considering the next-gen Layer 1 projects, I believe, are the most bullish. And we've even, if you look at the breakout against SUI and Solana, we've started to see SUI again, really perform well against Solana. So I think both of them are going to perform really well. And if you watch my video that I posted on Monday, this video here, I broke down why I think the next-gen Layer 1 space is the most exciting. I'm really heavy on Solana, really heavy on SUI, and I'm also heavy on ETH. I've been buying ETH since about $80, did round trip, the $4,000 prices. Would have liked to take some profits back then, but ultimately, even ETH's having a bit of a run at the moment. They did have an upgrade recently, which I'll share with you here. We saw, I can't find it now, but basically ETH has pushed through an upgrade. And we're starting to see a little bit of momentum back for ETH again. Again, will we see the ETH BTC pair break out? I'm not entirely sure. It's been a long time since we've really had altcoins run and Ethereum run, but we're starting to see some strength in ETH. In saying that though, none of this is going to happen without Bitcoin, right? So, Bitcoin really needs to lead the market, and we've seen really some positive signs come out recently. And I tweeted this, when was this? Yesterday. This was before we had the big pump overnight, right? So the timeline's been really quiet, and Bitcoin was sitting at 98,000, I think, when I posted this. But behind the scenes, fundamentally things are super strong, and I've been consistently saying this all year, that although the prices were down and we're seeing all this sort of chaos in the macro finance space, crypto continues to really build and be strong behind the scenes. So we've seen M2 money supply growth, ETF inflows are growing. We're seeing BTC strategic reserves being approved across states in the US. Trump announced last night with the UK a really positive deal. So he started to pull back a little bit on the tariff whiplashing. And we're starting to see really big institutions like MicroStrategy, MetaPlanet, and also another, few different companies being built to essentially buy Bitcoin en masse, right? And if we start to see QT coming down and rates come down, which I think will come to fruition soon, Trump is really putting the pressure on Jerome Powell to cut rates. Last night he pumped the stock market. He quoted, "You better go out and buy stocks now." Stock market started to rally, and then crypto is obviously going to follow. So consistent with what I was saying back at the start of the year, and this was a post I made to our members, this was 4 months ago, January 24th, that really my ultimate strategy this year was really to simplify things and note that I felt that, the ETH BTC trend and where Trump was heading to clean up that backyard, we're going to see a multi-month consolidation process where we saw a lot of choppiness and, restriction in the altcoin market. And we saw that with BTC dominance. I got this, pretty much bang on. I posted this back in January, how I was reducing my altcoin allocation, going heavier on Bitcoin. We then saw BTC in dominance, literally grow by 15% over the course of the last 3 or 4 months. But now we're starting to see altcoins rally. I started to allocate a little bit more back into alts when I posted this video, the other day on Monday, but essentially really focusing on those next-gen Layer 1s. Now, into the next part of the cycle, I really want you to remember where we were a month ago, right? A month ago, we were literally at the bottom of the market. The bottom of the market, there was a lot of panic. There was a lot of fear. Solana, I think, dipped to $90 on a wick down, $92, right? This was literally a month ago. Yeah, we had this wick here down to $91 here. We wicked down and we're up 70% in a month. But that was the day that we had the most amount of fear, the most amount of people messaging me saying, is the cycle over? We've missed the top. And people were really panicked. I want you to remember that pain, right? Remember the pain of being down. Remember the pain of thinking you missed the top. And remember the pain of not taking profits when you would have hoped so, right? Or when you would have liked. Now, did we miss the top? Not necessarily. I don't think, again, I've been super bullish and consistent that I think the top of this cycle is going to be later this year, early next year. But that feeling of regret is the reason why you're going to succeed and try and actually be better at taking profits at the back end of this cycle. Because when we get to the top, the opposite will be true, right? And I detailed this video when, again, this was 3 months ago when the market was crashing. Ultimately, the reason we feel the fear and the panic is what crypto is all about. Crypto is the most emotionally driven market on the planet, right? It's 24/7. It's hugely speculative. We've got lots of different traders and it moves extremely fast. Crypto is moving faster than ever. So you've got to look, you've got to look beneath the noise, beneath all the chaos, and understand that emotions are going to be riding higher and lower than where the market should always be. And this is crypto in a nutshell, right? So crypto, let's say Bitcoin's heading at 40% growth compounding on average over the last 10 years. We're going to have huge growth above that, and we're going to have big depths below that. Altcoins even higher, right? But the price and value are two separate things. The price of an asset is what you and I are willing to pay for, but the value is what we know is the underlying value of that asset. And in crypto, that will go higher and lower, right? So the value of the asset will continue to grow as long as it's a good asset like Bitcoin, but the price will go above and below due to emotion, right? So just like we felt that pain, being down bad and worrying and, feeling like we've stuffed it up again, the opposite will be true at the peak of the cycle, right? In the peak of the cycle, we're going to feel euphoric and we're going to feel like it's never going to go down and we're going to feel like we should never sell, just like we thought we shouldn't buy here. This is the same feeling. So remember that pain at the top because it's going to be inverse and you're going to feel that euphoria, right? And that's why we'll talk about exit strategy in a second. The other part of, over the last month or so, I want you to remind yourself on is like these have been the golden opportunities to buy assets. And I posted this 2 months ago, pretty much near the bottom, right? Why I was buying the dip. And I put out these posts to our members exactly what I was buying. And again, I was heavy on Solana, Sui, ETH, BTC, really focusing on building up my blue chip assets while risk off, I guess momentum was in the market. Okay, I still hold a few other sectors, which I'll share in a second. But if you look at the returns on the assets that we've been following, it's been phenomenal, right? Really over the last month, we've seen Sui up 100%. Maple Finance is one that I've continued to talk about, and I spoke about that in this video here, up 142%. Hyperliquid, again, another layer one project. I think the AI space, I'm big on Prime, hasn't really come to fruition just yet, same as gaming, but I'm bullish on these sectors, right? Next gen layer ones, I think DeFi is going to play out. I think memes will have a run. I've got Pepe, but you've got to be a lot more selective, like I've been speaking about. You've got to be a little bit more focused on fundamentals, and it's why Maple Finance has been a big one for me. This is our research platform where we do our research and insights. This is not just me doing all the research. We've got a team that does this, but really the fundamentals of Maple has been why we've been so positive. And I think there's been a big shift, and there will be a big shift back towards fundamentals. Yes, I think memes will run. I think there's other more speculative assets will continue to run because that's just the way the market is in crypto. However, to back those more fundamental projects is going to give you a leg up, especially when we go into the next correction. The other thing is just more bullish. Here was the Ethereum update. You can have a look at this, but essentially, really focusing on, that next phase for Ethereum and trying to really build more for crypto natives. It's building more, more technology to build real world finance applications, AI. Again, I think Ethereum is the best, most secure blockchain. However, it's just struggled so much in terms of marketing and getting that exposure. So hopefully we start to see a bit of an inverse. But also in the US, seeing that banks can now literally buy, sell, and custody crypto, right? This is massive. Imagine in Australia if Combank start offering, crypto. It's going to be huge. This is what's going to take us to the next level of the adoption that's really going to bring in those next billion users, is the ability for people just to buy it without even having to think about it, integrate it into banks, already happening in the US. It's really exciting. The other thing as well is I think more people are starting to realize is the debasement and just inflation and just normal people figuring out that, hey, shit, the world's expensive and, cost of living is going up, salaries aren't really going up. And guess what? For a lot of young people, no hope in buying a property, right? Maybe in Australia because they're offering just ludicrous Ponzi economics deposit levels. But, the reality is that a lot of young people, a lot of generation, a lot of the younger generation are going to crypto because that is the fastest way to get access to assets, to get access to exposure to wealth creation that will get them out of that rat race without having to go and put down 100K or something like that into a property. And I think that's, exciting for crypto because this is the next wave of, application. I saw Grand Theft Auto, the next Grand Theft Auto game is coming out next year. And there's word, I think they announced yesterday, that there's going to be integrations with crypto, right? Big games, big applications that younger generation is already used to using digital assets, digital tokens, and I think that over the next 10 years, we're just going to see more and more adoption and wave of people being able to use crypto in everyday life. And honestly, even going back to Bitcoin, man, it's just the best asset on the planet. And same with property, right? Because you are literally getting screwed every single day. The banks are screwing you, the government's screwing you, you pay all this tax, all this shit. No one teaches you financial education. That's why I quit school, because I'm like, this is absolutely rubbish. No one's telling me how to actually, get out of the rat race. They want you to be stuck there. And it just gets me frustrated. Anyway, I could talk about this until the cows come home. I think the other thing, I posted this on Twitter this morning. For me, like I get so much like social sentiment, and this is the part where I want to talk about exit strategy, because exiting the market is the most important. When do you exit? How do you exit? Like that is really, really difficult to understand. One of the best edges I have, and the reason why I was able to make life-changing amounts of money back in the metaverse, before the metaverse was really a thing, was my ability to read sentiment, human psychology, and also since I've grown a following, I think I've got 70, 80,000 followers now, I've been able to, across different channels, I've been able to really read the sentiment of users and people that follow me. I've got 1,000 clients that I work with. So I get such a massive array of sentiment. And you know what's so funny is that literally the bottom of the market, well, it's not funny. I mean, I know it, right? But it's so obvious that the bottom of the market, April, a month ago, was the point where I started losing followers on Instagram, right? So I, usually add a lot of followers, especially when the market goes up. But my followers turned, in terms of net growth, it turned net negative on the day or the 2 days before the market bottomed, right? And you get messages and comments and all these sorts of things about how, you're wrong, you're an idiot, fuck you, like you got no idea what you're talking about. And then when the market pumps, you get all the other messages. And that's with the euphoria, the greed, the excitement, follower count goes up. And that for me is such a great indication for the bottom and top of a cycle. Now, I'm not saying the top is in by any stretch. I do believe we're going to continue running in the back end of this year and early next year. But sentiment is going to give me, and has done in the past, a great edge. It's very hard to, explain it. It's very hard to, I guess, put it down as a metric. We've got sort of a bull market top metric that we use internally with our analysts. But sentiment and human psychology is by far, in my opinion, the best indicator. And I'll be using that and tracking that and sharing that back here. But I love, this is my sort of way to get back to people that, don't exactly like me online. Being able to showcase, again, results. And I think that's really, for me, being transparent, in the business and, just dead set in crypto. There's so much lack of trust and transparency. And it's why, Collective Shift, we have a massive trust and transparency policy where you get to see all of my assets. We don't do affiliate deals. We don't do referral arrangements. Like, I'm literally fully exposed to crypto. I'm investing everything I have done for the last 8 years. And I built this business, Collective Shift, to help other people. And when I make them money, and if I make them money, I get paid and I can buy more crypto. And if they don't, they leave and cancel. And we've grown to over 1,000 clients. And that's why we're good at what we do, because essentially I'm just sharing what I do. And that's, at the end of the day, I've already made a lot of money in crypto, and I love what I do. So I love getting comments like that, because I know I can post back and show them I'm right. So this is, what I posted at the start, just around, why I think Sui is leading this cycle. Really bullish on Sui. I think Solana's, again, going to do really well, but really excited about the Sui trade. Why I am most bullish on these next gen layer ones is essentially because that's where the big capital is going. Like the ETF demand is going, and where the ETF creation is going to be is around Solana, Sui, Ethereum, for example. They're not going down into the mid caps. So just be careful with your mid caps. I think a lot of them have certain profiles where they're not going to probably outperform others. That's why, again, I think the risk to reward piece is really important. Being able to look at not only how much these assets could return, but looking at what is the risk associated with those assets. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of people over allocated on high risk assets that didn't have the reward profile. And I guess that's sort of part of our algorithms and trading that we do here. It's just to really ensure that you've got a good portfolio allocation. Anyway, that's another day for a video. But talking about exit strategy, it really comes down to 7 parts, in my opinion. And the exit strategy is a part of your broader strategy. And I work with people to build this for them, but you can get this for free over on our website. Really, you can come up with a number that you want to sell your Bitcoin for, your altcoin for. That's easy, right? I can say I want to sell my Bitcoin at 150K, whatever. But really, the biggest problem you're going to have, and I know this because I've been through it, in all the cycles of being crypto, is that your head is going to be the reason why you won't sell, because it'll get to 150 or it'll get to your price point, it'll get to your target, and now you go, oh, what if it does a little bit more? What if it goes a little bit higher? What if could, maybe this, imagine if, and then all of a sudden, right, you're continuing, and usually at that point where you get the most growth in the bull market is the top, because that's when people are most euphoric. That's where the top is, and then we retrace and go into a bear market, right? And it goes hard, right? And it sells off hard, and now you had this psychological number that you wanted to sell at. You didn't do it. It went higher. Now you could have sold at that point, and now you're down 30%. And guess what? It was hard to sell then. It's going to be even harder to sell 30% down because you knew how much money you had, right? So the biggest one, before you set up exactly what your exit plan is going to be, is you need to understand what your goals are. Like, set a target. And, I had a platinum client yesterday. We sat down, his goals, he's got around $900,000 in his portfolio. His goals was he wants to buy a property in Greece, right? $500,000. He wanted to also buy an investment property in Australia, so probably, 1.5 million. And then he wanted passive income, okay? And his time horizon was about 5 years. And we sat down, we looked at, okay, well, what's it going to take with your portfolio to get there, right? With your Bitcoin alone, even if Bitcoin's compounding at 30% annually, right? Plus or minus volatility. If you've got $600,000 in Bitcoin, that's going to be like 2 million, 2.5 million in 4 or 5 years time, right? That alone is probably going to pay off, just the investment property in Australia. Then you got your altcoins. For me, the altcoins is about selling down at the point where we're getting to the back end of the cycle, when Bitcoin started to top, and we're really going to get out of as many altcoins as we can and take profits and put into Bitcoin. That's my strategy. I don't have specific price targets for my altcoins because really it's led by Bitcoin. Altcoins won't go up unless Bitcoin goes up. But I do think around that $150,000 US level for Bitcoin is going to be somewhere near the top. And guess what? We're probably not far off that, especially if we have another leg up. We could be there later this year. So having that understanding and then looking at our altcoins and going, okay, how can we simplify this? He had 3 exchanges. He had 40 altcoins. Shit was everywhere. If you're busy, guess what? You're not going to be able to go across 40 different assets, sell a bunch across all these different exchanges. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. Simplify it. I'd rather have more assets in less coins than more capital in less assets than less capital in more assets, right? Because a lot of the return profiles on these altcoins are very, very similar. All you're doing is adding complexity. So simplify it. Then when it comes time to taking profits, and again, this is where I sort of, will alert and send out sort of these posts and help members, and I'll do my best on YouTube, but obviously members get the big leg up there, is when it comes time to sell, you want to take decent profits. And guess what? When you take profits, it's going to feel absolutely nauseating. It's going to feel terrible. You're going to feel as though you're making the worst decision. I felt that when I sold massive amounts of money back in the metaverse, and looking back, like, the metaverse isn't even, spoken about anymore, right? A lot of those assets are down 90%. So having that goal, having the time horizon, the portfolio structure is obviously important. We spoke about that. But then also looking at, tax structure, all these sorts of things. But really coming back down to your sell strategy is really looking at, what is the target or time or sentiment selling strategy that you want to use, right? So I use a mix of sentiment selling, which I just spoke about, but also looking at target base and taking percentages off as we go up. I think dollar cost averaging out is probably the best way to do it. However, it is very, very hard with altcoins. So I'll be DCing out of Bitcoin, but when it comes time to sell my altcoins, I'll be taking a much bigger chunk. I really like to document this, document it, write down the goals, and come back to it. And that's what's going to give you the leg up when it comes time to sell. Now, if you need help with your sell strategy, we're actually hosting on May 15th, Thursday, May 15th, which will be next week, the largest in Australia high net worth crypto investor summit. We're up to nearly 1,000 registrations already. This is for people with more than $250,000 in their portfolio. You can join if you have less. However, we've got 5 talks, 5 hours. It's going to be absolutely epic. And one of those is from our analyst, which is how to create a bulletproof crypto sales strategy and exit plan. That'll be delivered by our director of research, Matt, and our senior analyst, Simon. So these guys are on my team. They work for Collective Shift with me, and we'll be helping you build that sales strategy out. Completely free event. Definitely go over and check it out. Spending tens of thousands of dollars in this event, full production. It's going to be absolutely epic. I'm so excited. But you can also look at some of these PDFs and resources if you remember. And also this one is for free over on our website. So hopefully that's been helpful. That's my strategy. That's my exit plan. Again, make sure you don't round trip. Again, make this one count. If you need help, again, jump on the summit. You can head over to our website, collectiveshift.io/summit. If you want to join up on our membership, we also have details on our website as well. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave me a comment if you did enjoy it. Leave me a subscribe. It does very much help me out. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.